So this is who gets what, so let me tell you a story here. It really did sound like the door to the conference room locked. Blake Giselle really hated confined spaces. Or the feeling of being trapped. So you could imagine how this divorce, well, let's spell divorce correctly, how this divorce arbitration was playing with his nerves even before the judge stormed out. Okay, Armand Rosamilia got a fresh cup of coffee. Already did 1,500 words this morning and hit my 50,000. Let's keep this going. I had checked on that this morning because we're gonna look at that again right before I do the article in the fourth block today. But very excited that you were able to hit that right before another update on that. So that'll be really cool. Hope things are going really well for you. All right, before the judge stormed out. All right, it really did sound like the door to the conference room locked. Blake Giselle really hated. I'm saying really a lot. Let's just take out really there. I got no word count limit on this one. I can just write whatever I want. Blake Giselle hated confined spaces or the feeling of being trapped. So you could imagine how this divorce arbitration was playing with his nerves even before the judge stormed out. Tom Duffy tells you good job, Armand Rosamilia. I don't know if you're busy writing, but wanted you to pass that compliment on to you. All right. Before the judge stormed out. 2 walls on this spacious third floor. All right. Spacious third floor corner room made it hard to feel too trapped, even if the judge had made good. Armand says, thanks, Tom. I'll work on other projects for the rest of today now and drink more coffee, too. There you go. Clean your system out with some of that coffee. Get you all hyped up, depending on which brand you're taking right now. 2 walls on this spacious third floor corner room made it hard to feel too trapped, even if the judge had made good on his odd threat. Only 5 people sat on 2 sides of a table made for 20. 3 sides if you counted the court reporter, the guy tapping the record into his little machine every time someone spoke. There was a word for that job because there was a word for every job. Blake thought, Blake had the word scriptographer stuck in his head, but he knew that wasn't it. The other, oh no, hold on. I don't want to ramble too much here, but I want to get to the point of who everybody is. Blake was regional coordinator for Dynmar Medical Services. That was his job. That paid for their lives. Tammy. All right, I'm going to break that into another paragraph, even though I'm still talking about jobs. I think it'll work fine. All right, Tammy Rogers. Still technically Tammy Rogers Giselle for now. Made pottery, jewelry, and his life miserable. None of those jobs paid shit. Which was why she needed to come away from this with a chunk of his hard-earned life. Okay. He had several titles he used regularly for Tammy now, but none he wanted the recorder guy to tap into the record. Next to Tammy, Don Hintz, her old, fat, frumpy lawyer. Okay. Her old, fat, frumpy lawyer looked to the court recorder, like most of them did, after the door clicked shut. Don was the only one. Don was the only one sweating under these chilly air conditioners. Under this chilly air conditioning, let's say. He was lopsided in his chair all the time, now leaning toward the recorder with his eyes wide. The cuffs, we'll say before he sat down, the cuffs of his pants billowed around his fat calves, making him look like the kind of lawyer that regularly landed his clients in jail. Blake should be so lucky with Tammy today. Okay. Don stammered a bit, but finally got his words out. Did he really lock the door? Instead of answering, the recorder guy recorded. Tap, tap. Let's do two periods here. Tap, tap, tappity, tap, tap. Then he paused, staring back at them. Tammy looked to the recorder for answers too. This guy was their closest connection to the absent judge. Tammy still glanced at Blake's lawyer as she had been doing the whole morning. Although this had dragged on into the afternoon already, Blake thought. He was paying the hourly on this arbitration for his half and her half once she took it from him. Unless they took it from his pocket. Okay. Blake liked that Tammy couldn't stop looking. He had to remind himself not to stare sometimes too. His bulldog of a divorce lawyer wore a form-fitting orange dress his bulldog of a divorce lawyer wore a form-fitting orange dress. I'm going to use divorce warrior here in a minute too. That was funny. His bulldog of a divorce lawyer wore a form-fitting orange dress. She was blonde and looked young, whether she really was or not. She wasn't had work done. She wasn't had work done. No, she wasn't the. I need to put a "the" in there. Sorry, I'm trying to get this tone just right. She wasn't the had work done sort of young looking. Let's use her name now. Lainey Stockline. No, that's not. Stroke. When I come up with the names for these characters, I went and used a search for surnames, and so I was just kind of using letters. So I put a T, look kind of down through, then put the R, then decide on a vowel, and I kept going until I came up with a name that sort of fit like the the rhythm or whatever that I wanted for the particular names and that kind of thing. So all these names are real names. They're real surnames that exist somewhere around the world. But I was looking to sort of construct one that was different from anything I'd done before. So I wanted them to sound different, sound unique, all that kind of stuff. All right, so she wasn't the had work done sort of young looking. Lainey Strokeline was defying gravity and defying gravity and time, sort of beautiful. The kind of lovely, no, let's say stunning, the kind of stunning that angered other women. Say, I got to use the same paragraph. This is all the same stuff. It's going to be a long paragraph, but that's okay if I break it up with some shorter ones afterward, so the reader doesn't get lost in a long wall of text here. The kind of stunning that angered other women. This was the sort of woman that Tammy probably pictured. Okay, are you writing another Jennifer Aniston story? Oh no, I don't think so. I think Tom wants to put Jennifer Aniston into every story, and that's what I think. This was the sort of woman that Tammy probably pictured Blake with when he went off to earn money, and she and Tammy sat around the house he paid for, and Tammy sat around the house he paid for, making pottery. In the rare moments she wasn't on YouTube, Netflix, TikTok, or whatever the hell else. All right, his rom-coms are the best. All right, so we need to turn this violent so it doesn't turn into a rom-com here. All right, Don, let's say sweaty, frumpy Don posed his query differently. Read back to me the judge's last statement before he left. Okay. The recorder responded. Judge Rippand. Judge Rippand. You four can sort this out on your own before I waste another moment going in circles. I'll be outside. I'm locking you in. The guy poised his fingers above his keys and waited as if that were the end of it. Then he stepped out. Did he really lock us in? Don's voice got shrill at the end. Blake hoped his lawyer, his divorce warrior, would eat this frumpy little man alive. Tap, tappity tap. Don's shrill little voice was now on the record. I want it on the record that Judge Rippand left the room. Tap, 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 tap. So noted. Laney reached a hand with perfect natural nails across the table. Just short of Don's notebooks with pages sticking out. Tammy stared at that hand and its shiny nails. Well, let me spell the wife's name correctly. You know, Blake could just be a terrible guy, so we don't know for sure that, even though he's our viewpoint character, we don't know for sure that he's the good guy here. All right, Tammy stared at that hand and its shiny nails. Blake noticed her noticing. Laney said, Don, I think we can solve this over the next little while, unless you are not able to continue. He looked up, but not at her, where Tammy couldn't look away for long. Don could never really gaze upon her. He always averted his eyes to one side above her head or down at the shiny table. Okay, let's say or most often. Let's say or most often down at the shiny table. All right. With her hand right where he would normally stare, Don found something to focus on outside the windows. I'm fine to continue. I'm fine. We're fine. Let's good. Let's go. All right. So I kind of got him stammering there. All right. You can buy a new one. Tammy blurted out. Her eyes darted between Blake and Laney. He hoped she pictured him with her, and it was killing her. It took Blake a beat to remember what they had been arguing over before the judge stormed out and sealed them in together. In that pause, Don hovered a hand, let's say a pudgy hand over his client's arm, but didn't quite bring himself to actually touch her. He tried to whisper something quietly by her ear. I'll say Blake couldn't make it out. But the recorder tapped something into the record. Don pulled away from Tammy as if being caught in some act more nefarious than trying to get his client to shut her trap. Blake said, "I shouldn't have to buy a new one. I bought that one You enjoyed it plenty when we were together. I'm not stepping down, so you can step up in the world. Blake said, I shouldn't have to buy a new one. I bought that one. You enjoyed it plenty when we were together. I'm not stepping down so that you can step up in the world. You don't get somewhere between half and all, dear. Let's keep it friendly. Let's keep it friendly. Dawn said. Lainey cut in. If you want friendly, go into elder law, Dawn. She can live on the monthly. Let's say comfortably. All right. She can live comfortably on the package we offered. And if she insists upon pushing this, Lainey cut in, if you want friendly, go into elder law, Don. She can live comfortably on that package we offered, and if she insists on pushing this, Don, then the things get sold. And we argue over her share of the sale. Then we are going to renegotiate the package to reflect the funds from selling everything off. Up to you. I worked for Tammy lost her train of thought when she drew Lainey's attention. What? Blake snapped. Did you get confused about what that word meant? You don't work. You've never worked. You took, and I gave. So now you are trying to take again, because that's That's all you know how to do. All right. Dawn burst out. That's enough. I've had enough of that kind of talk. That, the judge had enough of it too. Blake was surprised. Blake was surprised. Blake was surprised by the force behind it. Behind that, Don was still lopsided in his chair. There was real fire behind those words. Laney asked Don, "You need a minute?" Maybe we should call a recess. He waved toward the doors. Until we figure out what if it's really locked. If it's really locked, let me get a quotation mark in the right place. Laney said, you can get a cup of water or more coffee while the adults talk here. That's not how this works, Laney. She shrugged, and she shrugged as he stared at the table. We can't officially call a recess without the judge here. It's an arbitration, Don said. It's an arbitration, Don said. We can, as Don searched for his words and the recorder, tapped away, Blake leaned over the table and said, what do you think you're trying to do? Get my fair share. Tammy answered back a little too quick for Blake's liking. Get my fair share, Tammy answered back, a little too quick for Blake's liking. The tippity tap, no, let me lowercase that. The tippity tapping continued. Blake wasn't sure if all the crosstalk was getting recorded, but he didn't much care in that moment. Tippity tapping. All right. You have no fair share. He managed to stop short of getting a slur into the record. We're about to see, aren't we? I see fine. I've seen how you have taken and taken while staying cold and resentful for all I ever gave you in this one-sided relationship. She snorted at him. Blake wondered how that sort of thing got recorded in the transcript. Okay. All right. Blake, I don't think you realize where the cold was coming from in that house. Is it warmer where you're squatting now as you wait for this to work out? He called her dear before, so let's do it again. Dear. She rolled her eyes like the teenager she was far from being in everything but her immaturity and selfishness. He wanted to slap her, but he'd never admit that, even to himself. I'd rather live in a cardboard box than another moment next to you. He meant to smile, but it felt more like a snarl. hope. Let's say that's a starting point in this negotiation that I can live with. Tammy. You'll find out what you can live with once this is over. Maybe we can get this back on track. Lainey broke from her let's say procedural discussion with Dawn that Blake had tuned out. Blake still snarled. I can't wait until you are some other man's problem. Once enough people grow tired of your shit, maybe you'll have to admit you are the problem here. Whatever makes you feel like a man. Okay, now let's say Don shouted out the judge, locked us in a room. Lainey, we can't ignore that. We can't. No, not 3 exclamation points. We can't. Tappity tap tap. Whatever makes you feel like a man, Tammy said, with a shit-eating grin, and she looked out the windows to her side beyond. Whatever makes you feel like a man, Tammy said with a shit-eating grin, and she looked. Okay, I had an ing there. That's what was throwing me off. And she looked out the windows to her side beyond where Judge Rippand, still getting paid by the hour, used to sit. She stared out that window like she had won. Maybe she had, because Blake was furious. Maybe she had because Blake was furious. Let's say even before she added, good discussion, champ. Alright. F you, Tammy. That's enough. That's enough. Don, cut in. Why don't you get pants that fit and leave us alone? Blake said. Laney laughed. Down on a lower level of his mind, below all his rage, hurt, and shame, Blake knew his lawyer should be telling him to shut up. But he enjoyed that laugh. That laugh made him feel like a man. You should be keeping your client under control. Don said. Blake didn't care that what Frumpy Don said was actually true. He wanted to slap that man on his thick jowls and watch them shake. That truth he could admit to himself. The lawyers were back to his squabbling. Let's say they're squabbling. As Laney said, the lawyers were back to their squabbling as Laney said, "You don't concern yourself with what I tell my client, counselor." Tammy said, "I've been effing myself for years because I'm the only one who can do it right." You know that's not true, Blake said with a smirk, with his own smirk. You wish it was, but we both know it's not. I've gotten good at faking it with you in every part of our life. You're good at being fake. I'll give you that. I can't wait until I find someone worth my time. Blake. I'll spend your money on my life with him, and we'll laugh about it as he gives me what you couldn't, all on your dime. Sadly, Blake said, trying to keep the shake out of his voice. Sadly, he'll probably end up hitting you like all the others before me. I know this is getting dark, I apologize. But we both know that sometimes you like that sort of thing. He'll probably end up hitting you like all the others before me, but we both know that sometimes you like that sort of thing. Sometimes you beg for it and thank me afterward. Now she does the F-bomb. F you, Blake. F you to hell. Alright, that felt good. He was tied in knots and thought he might need to throw up later. But in this hell of pain and loss, that little jab that got through to her ego felt good in comparison. Ice water in hell, he thought. I'm going to have no problem finding someone better to do that for me. Tammy. He tilted his head ever so slightly in Laney's direction, hoping Tammy noticed, but that his lawyer was too wrapped up in flogging Dawn to see it. Unlike you, I have plenty to offer. I hope this BS drags out forever. Unlike you, I have plenty to offer. I hope this BS drags out forever until there is nothing left to give you. I'll build it back up. So I'll build it all back up from scratch on my own. Like I did before. While you scratch out a life you deserve in the gutter. You be. He finally said it and was sure the recorder tapped it out. Once that got read back, he knew he'd be giving her half for sure. Still, in this battle of emotional attrition, it felt like another small win. I'll scratch your eyes out, Blake. His mouth unhinged just a little. He turned to see if anyone noticed. That was when she lifted off her chair, knocking it over backward with a crash, and clawed the side of his face across the table. All the conversation ceased at once. To his credit, the recorder tapped out the last little bits of what was said before pausing as well. He felt, okay, let's say Blake. Blake felt all four burning lines diagonally down his cheek. Okay, hold on. And clawed the side of his face across the table with nails chewed ragged and pitiful in comparison to Laney's manicure. Okay. Blake felt all 4 burning lines diagonally down his cheek. One was wildly close to his eye, nearly making good on her threat to claw them out. He tasted blood inside his mouth on that side. Did she claw straight through? It hurt like hell, but that didn't seem possible. That didn't seem possible. He was afraid to test the area with his tongue, though. Don whispered, "Tammy?" Tap, tap. Laney stayed seated as Tammy leaned on the table with both hands. Okay, tap, tap. Laney stayed seated as Tammy leaned on the table with both hands, admiring her work. Her eyes were glassy, like she wasn't really seeing through them. Blake had seen her that way a few times before, and none of them were good. Laney turned. "I want it on the record that Tammy Rogers assaulted my client. I think we need to take that break now. Whether the judge is here to authorize it or not." Don said. "No breaks. No breaks," Laney shouted. "We're filing assault charges and dealing with that before there is any more discussion of this." Tappity, tap, tap. Tap. Okay. You want to tell them the things you begged me for. Tammy spoke in a lower register than her typical voice. Blake reached for the gouges in his cheek. Blake reached for the gouges in his cheek, but chickened out before really touching them. He forced a smile that brought searing pain with it. Searing pain with it. Alright, I need him to get a dig in here. Alright. You should go pick out that cardboard box now. B. You should go pick out that cardboard box now, B. You're finally going to get what you really deserve. Alright, I need to add something up here. Let's say find reach. Okay, there we go. Laney reached across the table. Don's notebook's page is sticking out. His laptop sat open at a crooked angle. It stood out in comparison to Laney's side, where everything lined up square. Okay, so now I can reference that here because I need something for Tammy to be able to hit him with. Okay. Say Tammy snatched up her lawyer's laptop. As she raised it over her head, the cord tore the plug from the side of the table. No, let's say pulled the outlet. Pulled the outlet from the side of the table instead of from the computer itself. She swung the device full into the side of Blake's bleeding face. He saw the thing coming from yesterday. She telegraphed the attack so fully, but he sat in shock through it, and his teeth felt loose in his mouth after he rolled, no, let's say as he rolled into a divider, no, into a support, metal support between windows behind him. Alright, he managed to stay in his chair. He managed to stay in his chair and upright as his ear rang and the room spun. Even the recorder guy cursed after that, with no more tippity taps from his fleet little fingers. Don stood, but instead of restraining his client, he turned and ran face first into the conference room doors with a crash. Stop right now, Laney ordered. Tammy crawled over the table. The cord did pull from the laptop, ripping out its port as she came down on her feet on Blake's side of the table. What are you doing? Say his words came mushy from his swelling mouth, and through the blood he now swallowed. He just watched his estranged wife approach with her lawyer's computer over her head, like he was curious to see what might happen next. All right. Laney stepped in and grabbed Tammy's arm, Tammy's elbow. Tammy whirled and clocked Laney under the chin. The lawyer's pretty head. Okay. The lawyer's pretty head twisted away from the blow. That was going to leave a mark that would be difficult to cover with makeup. Okay. Tammy turned to Blake again, and that was why she missed the right cross from Laney that staggered Tammy to the side. If she had been wearing heels like Laney instead of flats. I got a voice message from a telemarketer. I'll have to definitely check that later and not buy whatever they're selling. Mr. Frank, I was going to watch Ellen, but I don't earn J-Coin watching that show. There you go. That's going to be the next thing, earning coin in exchange for watching shows. I'm surprised they haven't come up with that already. They have come up with that. That's what's going on here. If she'd been wearing heels like Laney instead of flats, she would have fallen for sure. And this whole afternoon might have turned out differently. Watching his young, let's say, watching his beautiful lawyer clock his soon-to-be ex like that was worth every billed hour. It would be the highlight of this terrible spiraling day for him. All right. Tammy charged, and Laney brought her fists up. Tammy swung through the guard and nearly took Laney's head off. Let's say the lawyer took the lawyer's head off with the computer. The screen cracked everywhere. And the display finally winked out. Let's say, to her credit, we'll do new paragraph. To her credit, Lainey held on and took the busted computer with her out of Tammy's grasp and to the floor. Tammy tried to retrieve it, but Lainey scooted under the table with it as she spit out a little blood that clashed with her tight orange dress. Don shouted from the door, "It really is locked." As if that were the most significant fact at the moment. All right. Tammy grabbed Blake's throat with both hands. And squeezed. She wasn't the strongest, and Blake could still breathe. Tammy grabbed Blake's throat with both hands and squeezed. She wasn't the strongest, and Blake could still breathe, even though pressure built quickly in his head. "You like this?" she growled into his face. "Sometimes you like this." "You like this?" she growled into his face. "Sometimes you liked this, didn't you?" He managed to spit a syrupy pink swirl into her face. He braced himself for more claws, but got closed fist this time. He took a few shallow stabs before he realized, I know this is a violent story, if that's bothering anybody, I'm sorry. He took a few shallow stabs before he realized she still wore her engagement ring. Blake got into motion and took her by the wrists as he started to stand. She head-butted him twice, and he sat back down. As she reared back for another, he released her wrists and slammed his forehead into her nose with a satisfying crunch. Tammy sprawled backward. Tammy sprawled backward, just catching the edge. Just catching the edge before she would have fallen to the floor. Blake stood the rest of the way up. Blake stood the rest of the way up, but had to brace a palm against one window to keep his balance. Alright, Blake stood the rest of the way, but had to brace a palm against one window to keep his balance. Let's see, Tammy's nose was bright red, but didn't look broken. Tammy's nose was bright red but didn't look broken. One of her hands, let's not say that. The hand with the engagement ring still on. The hand with the engagement ring still on was twisted up from a couple broken fingers. That would make it hard to ever take that ring off. She didn't know how to make a fist. Blake's vision was cloudy on one side, and he prayed the ring hadn't done that. He prayed the diamond on her ring hadn't done that. Maybe she made a fist just fine based on how she had rocked him. All you had to do was give it to me all you had to do was give it to me and buy yourself another. Are you effing kidding me right now? The slur of his own words made him more angry. And as he charged forward, he thought about what the terrified recorder guy might write, let's say might type about him. Alright. Tammy took up Laney's computer in a rush. Hers was not plugged in. It had a good battery, which was quite heavy. When she put it across Blake's skull and sent him toppling to the floor. After his head knocked a chair out of the way, right against his ear, right against the cartilage of his ear. He wished he had just met the floor full on. Alright. Poor Blake is getting the rough end of this encounter here. Alright. Laney grabbed Tammy by the ankle from under the table. Okay, hold on, I'm going to add one more thing here. Black keys and pieces of white teeth, scattered out across the thin carpet behind where, let's say beyond where Blake landed. Laney grabbed Tammy by the ankle from under the table. But Blake still braced himself for that computer with all its heavy battery life to come crashing toward him. Okay, I need to lower case the B here. Alright, let's charge this towards a finishing point here. There's only so much of this that we need to make the point of the story. Tammy turned and battered Blake's lawyer in the head with her own damaged computer. Let's keep going. Laney tried to crawl away, but Tammy followed her under. Blake groaned as he tried to remember how to get up off a floor and failed. Dawn screamed. Let me out of here. They're fighting. They're killing each other. Blake hated him for that. This was no fight. At least not one he was winning. This was a nightmare. Someone on the other side, no, let's say the recorder guy, joined Frumpy Dawn beating on the doors. Someone muffled from the other side. Someone muffled from the other side. Now, someone called muffled from the other side. Is there a key for this? Let us out, Dawn screamed in a note that hurt Blake's already throbbing skull. Why did they make doors like this that key locked from the outside? In this era, how could an office get away with that? What about fire codes and HR? Okay. Tammy screamed and scrambled out from under the table. Two manicured nails had embedded in her cheek and torn free of the lawyer's fingers. Oh God, Tammy cried. as she fled on her knees. Someone help me. Blake couldn't believe she would beg for help like that after what she had done already. Let's say Lainey followed Tammy out into the open and stood on her tall heels. She was still pretty. Say stunningly beautiful. Even with one eye swelling and blood trickling from one nostril and the corner of her mouth. She really did look like a warrior now, coming up behind Tammy on her knees like some sort of sacrifice. Get her. Blake growled under his breath as he struggled to his hands and knees. It was Tammy who rose, and as she did, she swung the heavy chair that Blake had backed into the window. It was Tammy who rose, and as she did, she swung the heavy chair that Blake had backed into the window. The rollers flew loose on impact. The support post bent with a screech. Say, Lainey lifted off the ground, and one of her heels flew off a lovely foot as she pitched backward far enough to strike her head on the edge of the table on the way down. Whether it was the chair strike, whether it was the chair strike, the table's edge, or the awkward landing. Laney Struckland line landed with her head twisted almost completely around. The deceased lawyer and the chair both bounced and went still. Let's say Blake was now proceeding without representation. Tammy actually cracked her knuckles as she turned her attention on her husband. Blake remembered how to move. Blake remembered how to move and scrambled under the table. He scattered the chairs on both sides on his way through. Don and the recorder went from staring in shock back to beating on the door and begging for release. Okay. As Blake emerged from under the table near the coffee and water, Tammy ran over the top and dropped both knees. Tammy ran over the top and dropped both knees onto his lower back from the air. All his breath left him as he was sure organs had ruptured. Okay. The recorder picked up a chair and started striking the door with it. The wood splintered, and as it bounced back, it clipped Dawn. Hence the lawyer with his ill-fitted pants. All right, the lawyer with his ill-fitted pants held his face and stumbled away from the door, crying. Tammy knelt on Blake's back as she fiddled with something on the high table next to them. He heaved sideways, pitching her off and scattering sugars and, let's say, sugar packets and creamers as she fell. Okay, I think we're getting close to the end of this, so let's start moving it towards the conclusion. Blake stood up, but only just ducked aside. Blake stood up, but only just ducked aside in time to avoid taking a half full coffee decanter to the face. It shattered against the wall. Hot coffee still splashed him. And at least one shard of glass stuck through his coat and shirt into his shoulder. She came at him with the jagged pieces still attached to the handle. Blake, I keep getting ready to write the name Waldo because I wrote that entire NaNoWriMo novel about a character named Waldo for 20 days. So every time I'm about to write about this guy, I'm getting ready to call him that name. It is kind of like fighting zombies in here, isn't it? She came at him with the jagged pieces still attached to the handle. Blake squealed and only managed to divert her charge. I'll say her mad charge, because she's crazy, right? Maybe he made her crazy. You know how men are. Alright. Blake squealed and only managed to divert her mad charge enough to get around. Poor Don Hintz never saw her coming as she tore away the side of his neck and shredded the artery underneath. Okay. Even if medical personnel were present, I think personnel has two L's, doesn't it? Nope, two N's. All right. Even if medical personnel were present, there probably would have been no saving him. He lasted another few seconds, spraying blood all over his client. The floor, the tables. He lasted another few seconds, spraying blood all over his client, the floor, the table, the wall, and even the recorder, who gagged as he tried to spit the stuff out of his mouth. Don disfigured his face as he split the tabletop on his way down. With the lawyers both out of the way, this was just between, okay, hold on, don't need an 8 in the middle of that word. This was just between the couple now. Tammy turned after her lawyer finished dying in time to eat the hard edge of a picture frame. It showed a stormy ocean with sunlight breaking through on a tossing ship between the waves. Like a moment of hope. Say her head bounced off the wall, but running into the recorder kept her from falling. She sliced his groin and the inside of his leg. Before she could pull the glass weapon away, Blake came down flat with the picture, with the frame, shattering its glass over her head, lacerating her scalp. The recorder went down screaming, with the handle still lodged in his bleeding leg. The remains of the picture fell away. Tammy was painted. Tammy was painted up good from her scalp, from her hair down. But Blake decided it would have been more effective if he had stuck with the hard edge. She charged nails out at him. He focused on deflecting her claws, so she was able to sink her teeth into his bicep and tear back and forth. He ended up on his back on the table with pages of financial disclosures pasted to the back of his suit coat. She was on top of him, all teeth, claws, and fists. He didn't get much offense off, and his defense was full of holes as she tore into him. You never loved me. Never. You never did. You're effing crazy. That seemed to make her even more furious, as if that were possible. No, let's say as if it were possible to escalate this day any further. As he slid backward and fought for his life, he had a stray thought for Judge Rippand. That man, even though he was retired from the bench, would be in real trouble whenever those doors finally opened. He found himself wishing the court recorder guy had gone on taking notes of all this. His weight slid off the back edge of the table and brought her tumbling with him. She gave a cry of pain. He couldn't enjoy because he ate another knee, this time to the gut, that hurt him deep and left him on his back again. She leered into his cloudy vision. She had some sort of golden pen, golden writing pen, up in her fist like a dagger, as she said, "You hurt me deep. You hurt me deeply, Blake. Everything you ever did to me stole another piece of me. Say another piece of my soul. You bled me out day after day until there was nothing left to take anymore." She raised the pen higher over him so that it caught the slant of sunlight through the windows. Damn, it was getting late. this had gone on all day. Blake grabbed whatever he could put. Blake grabbed whatever he could put his hands on, and he struck out with it. As she came down with her pen. The pen, we'll do the same paragraph here. This is just about finished. Say the pen ground against bone as it entered his chest and twisted to the side. Tammy sucked in air, and her hands spasmed beside her face on both sides. The stiletto, there's no way I spelled this right on the first try. Oh, good lord, not if I put a P on the end. The stiletto, yep, the stiletto heel had sunk at least 2 inches into her eye socket before Blake's hand fell away. He had nothing left. He had nothing left in him to fight. All right, there's no silent P on that. I've been spelling it wrong the whole time. I accidentally put several silent P's on the end of words sometimes when I'm typing in a hurry here. He had nothing left to fight with, but was thankful when she fell backward. Okay, let's put a K in thankful. But was thankful when she fell backward away from him instead of onto him. He felt himself sinking into the darkness of unconsciousness or death. It was hard to tell which at this point. Of course, they finally got the doors unlocked and opened. Of course, they finally got the doors unlocked and opened shortly after all this. The group included security guards, but no sign of Judge Rippand. He'd have to give his explanation later. The court recorder breathed out one more slow exhale. And that was it for him. Tammy apparently had a knack for finding arteries that fit what Blake knew of her before this day started. I'll say before this day left the rails. Stenographer. He coughed out from, let's say Blake. Stenographer. Blake coughed out from the floor. Dark blood spattered his lips, his lower lip. That was what that guy's job was called. He knew, he remembered it.